Hi knitters, welcome to episode 103 of the Knitty McPurly podcast. I'm your host, Devin AT. You can find my website at KnittyMcPurly.com. On Instagram, I am Knitty McPurly. And if you want to email me, you can reach me at Devin at KnittyMcPurly.com. Welcome back, friends. Yay, it's Sunday. Last week, I recorded on Saturday. And it's funny because last week on Saturday, it was like 1,000 degrees. And then by Sunday, the temperature had plummeted. So in my podcast, I'm like, oh, it's so hot. And you guys are like, yeah, we've got like 4 feet of snow. So it was one of those, seasonal transition days, but whatever. We're all here. It's Sunday, got our knitting, ready to talk. Very, very excited. Happy Thanksgiving week. Americans, Canadians have Thanksgiving. I think they already had it, right? October is Thanksgiving in Canada. But for Americans, we have Thanksgiving coming up this week. My homeschoolers are off all week, which I'm super pumped about. My kids who are in school are a little bummed. They have to go to school for a few days, but alas. I have not started my Christmas shopping. Anyone else? Have you started? Where are you with this? I kind of figure, I don't know. I just haven't started. It just has not happened. I haven't even really given it that much thought other than knitting. I have been knitting for Christmas, but that's about it. And I've also kind of been waiting for the Black Friday sales. Like I told my husband I wanted an Apple Watch for Christmas. And he's like, well, we'll see if they have a good deal on Black Friday. We'll see. I don't know. But let's jump in today with our shop news. We're going to do shop news and then progress today. The Knitty McPurly Black Friday sale starts today at noon Eastern Standard Time. Today is Sunday, November 20th. So feel free to jump on my website if it's past that time. If you would like 20% off, use the code BF22 for Black Friday 2022. BF22 will get you 20% off of everything in your shopping cart. And I have some good stuff and some really good deals too. So scissor sleeves are new. I have them in ochre, which is a gorgeous yellow. And newly, I have them in a color called myrtle. It's just beautiful. It's a gorgeous green. These are made by Jennifer Yun. They come with a pair of Kelmscott Design scissors. Both of those things are made in Canada by other small businesses. So it's great. I also have hand balm back in tins. I don't have one up here with me, but that is exciting. So the tin is my favorite. If you missed last week's episode, go back and watch that one because I went into kind of some detail about the balm. It's just great. I like it a lot. I especially love it in the tin. It does come in the stick too. Both of those are in stock for Black Friday week. In my shop, we're celebrating all week, starting today at noon, going all the way through Cyber Monday, because who knows when you have time to shop. I have time to shop at random times. Sometimes it's midnight. You'd be amazed at how many orders roll in at 2 a.m. Like people do, they shop. That's when they have time. So you do you, folks. I have a new yarn base in my shop. I'm gonna hold it up. You can't really, I'm gonna talk about it a little bit more, but this is the Athens Alpaca. And this is it in the frost colorway. And it is a sport weight. I'm gonna be talking more about it, but it's amazing. Amazing. In the progress section, I'll talk more about that. It comes from Peru, in case you are wondering, as does most alpaca. It's 100% baby alpaca, and each skein is almost 300 yards. It's 100 grams, almost 300 yards. And I want to show some amazing color combos too, especially with regard to the allotrope hats. So this is a brand new pattern. And it is going to be available in my shop for now only as a part of the kit, but just wait a sec. Like this kit is awesome. I have it here. Let me tell you about this kit. So in the kit, you're gonna get 3 skeins of yarn, which is enough to make 2 hats, plus extra. So you could make a pom-pom, 2 pom-poms, depending on how much you have left over. One tip about this St. Petersburg Extra super bulky yarn is that the ties that tie it up are made of that yarn. So save the ties, because that is good pom-pom fodder. You're gonna wanna keep that. But you get 3 skeins of yarn. You get the stitch markers that are needed to make this pattern. You get the pattern delivered as a PDF download, wool wash in the sample size, and the most fabulous lip balm ever for free as a part of this pattern. So if you were to buy all of these things separately, it would be about $75, depending on, I mean, some things are free, so they're just extra freebies. But it'd be about $75. I am charging $59, and then you can get 20% off of that, which takes the price down to $47.20. And that is for 2 hats. It's for 2 knitting projects that make 2 wonderful Christmas gifts that you can knit up in an evening if you have that much time in an evening. I think I did these in two evenings just because I don't really have more than an hour and a half in an evening. But if you happen to have more time than that, then you can get a lot done. And I made more. This is another color combination. So this one is Frost, Trinket, and Pewter. And you see what you end up with here is you have one amount of yarn for the base of both hats, and then you're gonna swap the other 2 colors. So this is one combination. I thought this combination was fun. I like the darkness of the Black Forest cake with the brightness of the Roxette, which is the orange, and the Fontaine, which is the pink. This is just really fun. I would have made more of them, except I had just made enough hats. I wanted to move on and do something different, but you can get as many kits as you want. I have a bunch of them in stock. Go pick one up, use the code BF22 to get 20% off. That's gonna be, I'm really excited about that. I cannot wait to see your hats. I have a lot of good combinations. I'll put those up on the screen while I'm talking here. As I was dyeing the yarn and kind of coming up with the new colors, I was thinking, you know, what colors do I need to go together and make great combinations? And I did that, but still some of them surprised me. Like I had all the colors done and I was like, oh my gosh, look at these 2 together. They look so good. So it's just part of the fun that is my life. It is really fun. I live a really fun life. Progress. So I needed something to knit because I had made a bunch of these hats, and I just was kind of at a point where I didn't have anything to work on. And I thought about how what I really wanted to do was to knit a sweater out of the Athens alpaca. Before I talk about that, Kelborn Woolens had a yarn. I don't know if they still have it. It was called Road to China Light. And I think it was a sport weight. It could have been DK. And I had to rack my brain to think of what that yarn was called. But and I'll look it up and I'll link it below, but it is a combination of several different fibers. Camel, silk, like it's got a lot of really fancy fibers in it. This 100% baby alpaca feels like that. It reminds me of that. Like, I just think, gosh, this is Road to China Light right here, but it's not at all. Like, it's a totally different fiber content. It's just so interesting how it feels so much like that. Check out this combination. This is a combination that I was not expecting. Oh, look at Beryl and Frost together. Aren't those so great? So this is my latest sweater that I am designing, and I'm just playing around, all right? Like, I still have to work up the pattern for the Vesper sweater. I haven't had time. It's been super busy around here. Probably that pattern's not gonna come out until spring, which is fine. It's a very lightweight sweater. Everybody will be happy when it finally arrives. I'm working on a color work sweater, and right now I just have it on some 16-inch needles, but I'm just playing around. Oh gosh, when I hold it up, I think it looks amazing. When it's on the needles, I'm like, I don't know. Is this the short rows? This is the short rows in the back right here. But just the colors, don't they look so great? Gosh, I love them. They're so pretty. So anyway, I don't know. I'm just messing around. I have this amazing app on my tablet called Notability. It is, if you use an iPad, and they might, it might be able to be used on any device, but with like an Apple Pencil or some sort of stylus on another device, Notability is the coolest app because you can have a grid and you can use colors to draw out the pattern. So this is just me. I'm just playing around. My daughter calls these cakes. You can see how it looks like a cake, but I'm just messing around. So this is just kind of my idea for how it will start. But you see how you can do it with the colors. Like, isn't that cool? And this is just the way that it does it for you. It's just a background. It's a super cool app. It's free, but I pay like $7 a year or some really reasonable amount to get more storage. I forget. It was a good decision at the time, but now I forget why I did it. But anyway, that's a really fun app if you are into charts or you like designing your own charts. That's a really fun app to use. But yeah, I've been working on this and it's just pure delightfulness. It's really fun. Color work is so much fun and those colors are just so amazing. So this is gonna be the bulk of the sweater. The main part of the sweater is gonna be in this color, and then the color work is going to be barrel and trinket. I do have an allotrope hat in this combination. So after I made up these ones, I put the barrel with it. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's just so pretty. So that combination is one that you could use for a lot of different things. Today I am wearing my Benedicta. I actually posted a picture on Instagram this week of this sweater. I have two of these, but I find that I wear this one the most. This is a Christian symbolism. I designed it with that in mind because there are lots of sweaters that have other, inspiration. People take inspiration from lots of places. And I feel like as a Christian, I should be allowed to take inspiration from that. Right? So this has a lot of Christian symbolism. It also has some baubles. Fun fact about baubles is you can put them in if you want. Let me see if I can show you. Yeah, get the light to hit it a little bit. So this is a trinity of baubles. There's a triple. Each one is a triple. But if you wanted to skip them, and I can't say this is true about all baubles because there's lots of different ways to make a bauble, but I always make a bauble the same way, and it uses one stitch. So if you don't like baubles, you just knit that stitch, and that's how you omit the bauble. It's super easy just to leave it out. So yeah, that's my progress. It's really fun. It's so funny how I'll look at it in my hands and I'll think, I don't know, like I'm gonna keep going with it, but we'll see. I don't know if it's gonna be what I want. And then I hold it up and I'm like, oh, I love it. I don't know why. Why is that different? I don't know. Anyway, I've realized lately that I've been omitting the word of the week. And I think it's because I've been focused more on topics, but this week it is back. This week's word of the week is alpaca, because why not? It's super, super interesting. And now that I have alpaca in my shop, oh, it's so great. You guys, I wish we had squeeze-a-vision and you could just reach in and squish it because it's so great. Can we just talk for a second about how great a hand dye is? Like, look at all of the colors. This is what you get when you buy hand-dyed yarn. Like, this stitch is a different color than that stitch. See that dark one right there? Like, you're going to have variation in colors that is just so awesome. You go to a store and buy a sweater, it doesn't have that. If you go to Michael's and buy yarn, it doesn't have that. So hand-dyed yarn is special. Like, you see that even though this is a solid color, it is tonal. It has variation in there, and it makes your knitting so, so interesting. Anyway, we're gonna talk about alpaca. So I looked up the word alpaca where did I put it? Basically, alpacas have been around for a really, really long time. And the indigenous people in the Andes Mountains had the name that they used for it, we think, because when I was researching the word, I found that there were different ideas about where this word came from. But in Arabic, al is an article. Al is an article, like the. And so that's where they think the al came from. Now, paca comes from the Incan language, P apostrophe A-K-E, paca, meaning yellowish red. So they think, and you know, it kind of dates back to like the late 18th century, around 1792, from the Spanish word alpaca. But if we were to take that down, they think that the al is from Arabic, which would have come through Spanish when, you know, I guess, Spanish-speaking people moved into that area. So the Aymara people are the indigenous people who lived there before the Incans. And they were the one, actually no, but the Paca comes from the Incan language. So some sources say that the Aymara people called them alpacas, but they seem to credit things that came later. So I'm not exactly sure. But that is where, I don't want to say that's where this animal originated, because in researching the alpacas, it's super interesting how these animals kind of moved around. But basically, that's where it comes from. They can't say for sure exactly the definite etymology of that word. Alpacas are South American camelids. Camelid is like a heading, and under that are camels and alpacas and llamas and whatnot. So alpacas are often confused with llamas. Like if you saw one, would you know which one it is? I don't think that I would know unless there was a sign saying alpaca. But basically, alpacas are smaller, but they can be crossbred with llamas. So my word of the week was alpaca. Topic of the week is also going to be alpacas. We're going to be talking about them today because they're just really interesting. The Fleece and Fiber Source book is a super cool book. If you don't own it and you're interested in the history of these things, it is a great book. I highly recommend it. Llamas are larger, as I said, and they were bred to work. They are work animals on a farm. Alpacas were bred for their fiber. There are mainly two breeds of alpaca, Surrey alpacas and Huacaya alpacas. So I want to read a little bit to you from this book, but here are some pictures. On the top, this is a Huacaya, and that's kind of what you think of when you think of an alpaca. But look at this fancy one down below. That is a Surrey alpaca. So a lot of indie dyers dye Surrey silk, and I presume that it's silk blended with this Surrey alpaca. I've used it before, and I wasn't quite sure what it was. Like it's like mohair, but it's not. It's really cool. Anyway, I don't know too much about that. In Peru, alpaca fiber is classified under 52 natural colors, 12 in Australia and 16 in the United States. So that's interesting, 52 natural colors. I mean, even just those two that I showed you were two different colors. And if you look at this picture of the Surrey one, it kind of is a bit of a reddish yellow color. So you have to wonder if those early alpacas, that was their color, and maybe that's how they got that name. I don't know. But again, like I said, that comes from the Incan language, and that's more recent than the Aymara people who were there for centuries, perhaps longer. I'm not sure exactly. Alpacas communicate through body language, particularly spitting. Like when you think of spitting, you think of camels, right? Camels spit. Well, alpacas are part of the camel family. Llamas, they're all camelids. And so spitting is a part of the way that they show dominance when they are in distress or afraid or feel upset. Male alpacas are more aggressive than females, and they need to establish dominance in their group, like in many animal societies. In some cases, alpha males will immobilize the head and neck of a weaker or challenging male in order to show their strength and dominance, which is kind of hilarious. Like, can you just kind of get a mental picture of that? Like, when you think of alpacas, you think of that long neck, and like, that's what they go for. Like, it's just right out there. Like, I'm pinning that thing down. Oh, that's funny. So in the textile industry, alpaca typically refers to the hair of Peruvian alpacas, but more broadly, it can refer to a style of fabric that was originally made from alpaca hair, but now is made with mohair, Icelandic sheep wool, or even other high quality wool. So it can be a little bit confusing. What is really interesting about these animals is that the oldest ancestors of the alpaca family originated 40 to 50 million years ago on the Great Plains of North America, and they were not much bigger than jackrabbits. What would you give to go back there and see tiny little alpacas running around? You would die from the cuteness. Oh my gosh. I have not told this to my daughters, but I think that they would squeal as loud as they could if I told them that. Like, it just sounds so incredibly adorable. So basically, that's the origin. And we're talking like Pangea time. So, you know, they kind of moved around. They crossed the land bridge over into Asia. They come down South America, Central America into South America. Pangea separates. Like, this is a really, really, really long time ago. I'm not going to go into all of the details of that, but it is in the Fleece and Fiber source book, one of my very favorite references. Alpacas have 3 stomachs. Like most ruminants, they have several stomachs. I think cows have 4, don't they? But they're similar to cows in the way that they digest stuff. Basically, their digestive system takes plants, and through the stomachs and the ruminating, they convert it into protein. Because if we ate what they ate, we would die of starvation because our stomachs can't do that. They also have really interesting feet. Camels have a leathery pad on the bottom. It's not a hoof. So alpacas, camels, this whole group of animals doesn't have a hoof. I would have said they had hoofs, but they don't. There's a leather pad, 2 toes with really large fingernails. So I guess that's why it looks like a two-part hoof, but really they're just toes with large fingernails, or toenails, I guess is what we're saying. Cool. Another group, there are 2 other groups of camelids that are close to the alpacas that are found in the wild: vicunas and guanacos. And these were primarily bred for their fiber. The vicunas were critically endangered about, when was that? Oh, in the 1960s, they were critically endangered. The population of vicunas had shrunk to fewer than 7,000 animals. Interestingly, it says, to protect the remaining population, trade in the fiber became illegal. You don't have to kill the animal to get the fiber. Wouldn't it make more sense to encourage the fiber? Because that way you could get people to kind of farm them and breed them, and I don't know. It worked anyway because they're not endangered anymore. But this is fiber that is hard to find, maybe because they're more wild. I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, it is legal, and small quantities are finding their way into the delighted hands of textile artisans. Oh, it's illegal to transport the animals. So really, it's just these regulations that are causing this fiber not to be available. but it is crazy soft from what it says in the book. So it would be cool if these animals could be traded, could be transported, and we could encourage the breeding of them so that we could knit with their wool, because that's what this is all about. The fiber produced by camelids is hair because of its structure. That's what it is. Some of them have medullated fibers, medullated, where the fibers have a medulla, which is like a hard, coarse hair. It's like sporadic in there, and so you can, people would have to go through and pull them out. Obviously, if you're raising an animal for fiber, you want to have less of that because it takes a lot of work to get them out. But it says they are a plus when the fibers are made into rugs, but a big negative if you're making sweaters or blankets. Baby camelids have the softest and most desirable fiber. And it says expect to pay considerably more for baby fiber or yarn. This is the same as my other bases. I have updated the pricing on my website. I didn't want to go over $28 for a skein of yarn. I just feel like that's enough. Like nobody needs to pay more than that. But some of the different yarns I have gone below that. So, but this is $28 per skein, just like everything else. But I just thought this was really interesting, learning about these different animals. Much of what we know about ancient camelids comes from an amazing archaeological find from 1986, when 26 perfectly preserved alpaca and llama mummies dating back more than 1,000 years were discovered in El Ural, Peru. Interesting. And so these animals that they found had fiber, which if they could get a micron count on it, was still intact. So it says the pre-conquest discoveries show the alpaca fiber was really close to 18 microns and the llama fiber was 23 microns. Now, as they have bred and been crossbred and moved around and whatever, the range is much larger. Like the micron ranges for both animals is like between 8 and 90. You'll really get a huge span of different hair. So it really depends on which animal and probably how they were raised and bred, and all of that goes into it. Super interesting though, just really cool. And in this book, there are examples of all of the different fleeces, and they will show them woven and knit. It's just a really interesting book. Super, super cool. Okay, moving along to knitting fantasies. I love Christmas knitting. Probably you do too. Christmas knitting is super, super fun. I have not knit any ornaments, and I know that there are a lot of great ornaments out there. I think I'm gonna be doing some Christmas knit ideas in my knitting fantasies going forward. So starting today, we're gonna talk about Christmas stockings. And I sewed stockings for all of my kids a few years ago. I think I had been open to knitting them, but I couldn't find any patterns that I really liked. I don't know why. I don't know where I was looking or why I couldn't find them, because they exist. So I looked on Etsy and I found a shop called Santa's Sock Central. There are a ton of different stocking patterns on this site. And there's a couple where she'll charge $11, but the pattern will come with like 16 different charts. So you can kind of design your own stocking. Some of them are traditional Christmas. There are cat ones and dog ones. And I mean, honestly, you could really make whatever you want. Like get Notability, get that app, use that grid background and draw out whatever chart you want. And now, I don't know, now that I designed my own, I kind of feel like, what was my problem? I don't know why I couldn't just design my own. But Anyway, if you would like to knit a stocking like this, there are lots of good stockings on there. So if there's a lot of charts and a lot of different variety, it looks like she charges about 11 bucks. If there are fewer charts, they are more like $6. So yes, definitely go and check out that shop on Etsy. And that brings me to So Here's What Happened. I do not have a So Here's What Happened story, but I've kind of been feeling like it's a total cop-out for me to just be like, well, I don't have a story. I mean, I'm a knitter. I have stories, right? So I actually contributed a story to the Never Not Knitting podcast. It was episode 70. The episode is called The Crazy Green Blanket Lady. I feel like I was the crazy green blanket lady in the story. It was one of the blanket was one of the first things that I had knit. And so I thought, well, maybe I could play that story. But frankly, listening to myself from 10 years ago talk is untenable. Like, I can't do it. I went back and just listened to a few seconds of it. And I was like, I can't. But I was trying to remember that story. And I feel like it was when I was pregnant with my son, and I wanted to knit him a blanket. So I found this pattern from Purl Soho. It was a free pattern called, I actually don't remember what it was called. But it used a cartridge belt rib, which is basically a rib with some sort of a dropped stitch in there, I think, or a twisted stitch. I don't quite remember. In retrospect, it was everything I did was too much stitch definition. Like, I used a cotton rayon blend yarn, tons of stitch definition, with a pattern, a blanket pattern that was basically ribs. And so, you know, if you have a mistake, it's like your eye goes right to it. So, you know, as a new knitter, I really had no idea what I should pick. I just was like, this is a free pattern. I feel like I can do it. And I went into this yarn store, and this yarn store doesn't exist anymore. And the reason it doesn't exist anymore is because it was just filled with grumpy old ladies. And I don't know why that is such a stereotypical yarn store thing, but the grumpy old lady who runs the yarn store, and maybe that's not the case anymore. Maybe all those people have gone out of business. Now that people like us knit, like friendly people who are excited about it, you know, I don't know. But that yarn store didn't last all that long, even after that story. It's been out of business for a long time. But I remember going in there and trying to ask questions, and they just did not want to talk to me. Like, they just had no patience for me or my questions. I bought a ton of this yarn. I don't remember what it was. It was like a Barocco or something, some kind of a cotton rayon blend. And for a long time, I had that yarn. And I even knit my son a Milo vest out of it. If I can find a picture, I'll put it up. But I just remember we went on vacation, a family vacation, and this was one of our early family vacations where we did not realize kind of how much space we were going to need. So we were all in one hotel room, and we're just in a family of introverts. You don't put everybody in one hotel room. Like, there aren't enough corners in the room for that many introverts. So I was pregnant at the time with my son. And so I didn't sleep very well. So I was up in the middle of the night with like one light and I remember I had this blanket laid out in the hotel room, and I pulled the needles out, and I felt like the world was ending, because you just are like, what have I done? What's going to happen now? And I'd go back and I would rip back and try to fix my mistakes. And it was such a formative part of my knitting, because that's how you learn how to read your knitting. You mess it up, you rip it back, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't, and you put the needles back in the stitches, and then you're like, why are these stitches so hard to knit into? Because you've twisted them somewhere. So you end up flipping them all, and it's just a really good way to learn. It was a really good way for me to learn. I never finished that blanket. I think I threw it away. I'm pretty sure it ended up in the garbage. And when I was at that yarn store, they didn't have a lot of interesting yarn. Like at that time, you know, in around 2012, really cool, interesting yarn was kind of coming on the scene. And maybe it had been there before that, but I didn't know about it. And so when I went to that yarn store, they had some amazing cotton that I have since made a few things with, but I ended up using that to make my son a baby blanket just in garter stitch. And it was a blue, and it was a hand dye. It was a cotton hand dye, so it had tons of variation. It was, what do you call it when it's thick in some places and thin in other places? It was that kind of yarn. Like, it was just so cool. It was such a cool yarn. I've made my youngest daughter a hat and mittens out of that yarn. And so that ended up being his baby blanket. The green one never came to fruition, but it was a really great learning experience for me anyway. I'd love to hear your learning to knit stories, and clearly I'm out of stories. So I know Thanksgiving week is coming up, but I will still have a podcast up because this is what I do. This is my favorite thing. Go check out the shop update today, or if it's later in the week, the code will work all week. So please, please check it out. If you're shopping for a knitter, or obviously, if you're getting a gift from your husband for Christmas, you know, come and pick that up. You can get gift cards for knitter friends. I can't tell you how often an order comes through and it's for 10 hand balms or 10 it will block out stickers. And I'm like, oh, some knitting group out there has said, hey, let's all go in on this thing and we'll get it all together. So I love that. That's so, so great. I love that you guys share this with your family members. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to do the work that I really love. So I hope you love it, and I will be back next Sunday. Send me a story. Okay, bye guys.